If you're here, then it means that you've probably seen the blue whale somewhere, or at least you've heard of the name DeepSeek. And it's blown up everywhere on X so far, and people are saying various things about it. Some people like it, some people think it's a threat to other models that already exist, but you can see that regardless of whatever everyone says, it has actually become the top free downloaded application inside of the App Store as of today. And everywhere you go, you can pretty much see DeepSeek. But the question is, what is DeepSeek and what is the hype behind it? So to understand that, we kind of need to see what sort of models we have out there. So we have our general models, and this is the category that we're usually using on a day-to-day basis. This is Claude, this is Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and this is GPT 4o. Um, so in this particular case, these models do really great at different tasks. And then you have the reasoning models, and some of these are O1. We also have O1 Preview and O1 Mini. The difference between these two is that one will take some more time to think about a particular output or a particular task before it then gives it to you. So O1, the pro version, can spend even up to 10 minutes thinking, and it will ideally give you the best output. So up until last week when DeepSeek released R1, which is the latest model, there was really not that many thinking models that were anywhere close to O1. So DeepSeek last week decided to release their own version of the thinking model, and the statistics speak for themselves, right? So if we go over to their Hugging Face repo, which is where they uploaded the model, and it's free and open source, so you can actually download it and use it for whatever you want. So if we go over there, we can actually see, DeepSeek R1, and you can come here and download the files, all the files. It's just a bit big, so you might not be able to actually use this as it is right now. But let's kind of look at the figures that they give us and the metrics to kind of understand why everyone is so excited by this. Here we go. You can see that DeepSeek is actually almost on the same level as O1, or in some cases, it actually beats it according to their benchmarks. Um, and according to the consensus out there as well, it seems that DeepSeek is actually the the is actually really good when it comes to reasoning tasks or even just general coding tasks. So you can see even code forces, it beats I believe it does beat Sonnet. I am not too sure about that, but different leaderboards, different boards across, it's just showing the great strength. So if we go to something like LMSys, where we can actually see how it's doing things. So let's say we want to focus on coding. Where does it rank, right? So we see that DeepSeek is still up here, like it's still actually in the top in the top contenders, and you can actually see that it's the only one which is open source in the top leaderboard. So now that we kind of know that, the question becomes, how do we use DeepSeek now that we actually know all this? No one's really, unless you have a technical background, you probably will not be able to just use this version of it. So what are the options? Well, if you go to deepseek.com, you'll be able to see that they have this. And so that means that you can access their application and then you can access their chat platform. You'll be able to see an interface like this, and you'll be able to use both their R1 model and you'll be able to use their V3 model. So if you don't activate this, then you'll be using V3. If you activate, R1, then you'll be using the R1 model. And using the chat is completely free. It's only the API where you have to pay. If you want access to the API, you can just come back to the same, homepage. You can go to the API platform, and it seems that you might be having some issues right now, but this is ideally how you'd access it. So openrouter gives you access to DeepSeek as well, and you'll be able to see it under the models. So when you select the models and you select DeepSeek, you can actually just type it in, and DeepSeek R1, here it is. So you can actually be able to chat with it right here, actually. And you can see different places where it's also being served. So um, this is one place where you can get it. This is another place. All of these are basically places where you can actually get that particular um, model. But you need to keep in mind that DeepSeek released a number of smaller models as well. So, for example, let's go back here and let's see this. So, they created R1, and what they did is that since R1 was really good at thinking, they managed to get the brains of R1 and create a few other versions, a few other smaller versions. So there is a 1.5 billion parameter model. There is a 7 billion parameter model. There is a 14 billion parameter model. There is a 32 billion parameter model. And I also believe that there is a 70 billion parameter model. So all these are basically built on top of, you know, DeepSeek's thinking, and they just take the thinking of DeepSeek and then they make it that we can actually, these models are fine-tuned on those particular patterns of thinking. So let's see how we can actually run this right now. If you want to use the chat platform, you can, and this is free, like I said, but then you can also download it yourself. So if you come to ollama.com, you'll be able to see different models that you can run locally on your PC. It depends how much RAM you have. So if you do, you just come here to download and it will give you different options. You will have to download um, Ollama. So for example, if you're using Linux, then it will give you a command to run. Mac OS will give you a command to run, and then Windows, it will also give you something to run. So that's great. And then when you're done, you just want to come to models. DeepSeek is the most popular right now with the 1.3 downloads. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, so this is actually the largest one. So you can see the different sizes. There's a 1.5B, there's a 7B, there's an 8B, there's a 14B, 32B, 70B, and then finally the biggest one, which is 678B. So if we click on that, we'll be able to see like you can actually download different versions of this DeepSeek, and you see this 1.5 will ideally use about 1.1 GB of RAM, and then of course it keeps going up and up and up. So if you don't have enough RAM, and I don't think you would be able to run anything above 32-bit, 32 billion parameters on a normal PC. But even then, most people don't have 20 GB of RAM. I also don't have 20 GB of RAM. So the maximum I can probably try to run is 14 billion parameters. Um, But you can just try these out because these are all free and you can test them just to see how they work. So if you get that, for whichever model you want to run, you can just select, for example, if you want the 1.5B, you can just get this to a shell of your choice. So if I do this and then I run that, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. So you'll see that we'll be able to run that. So for you, it might be different and we'll show you like the download steps, but I already have it downloaded and then we can just say, hey, and then you will be able to see some of the things that it's thinking about inside of its think tags, and then it will give you the actual output. So let's tell it what's the square root of 144. And let's see. Okay, so right now it's not thinking. So let's give it a complex question. Um, Give me your thoughts on the butterfly effect. So you can see that actually some of the smaller models might not think too much, although I know that actually it's supposed to be thinking, but I just don't know why, this is blank. But these models perform really well on different things, and they perform really well, particularly on mathematics and a few other things. But ideally, what are you going to use these models for? Like, okay, now you have a reasoning model that you can actually use. Now, the best use cases for these models is always going to be, you can use them for the same things as you use the general use um, large language models, but they shine in one particular thing, and that is coming up with plans. So you can give these models whatever task that you want them to do, and they'll be able to think up of a very good plan that you can then use to actually go ahead and you can pass it on to these models. So this is much more cost effective because imagine that, for example, um, this particular model here, if you're going to be using it, it's going to cost you about $60. If you're going to use, if you're going to have 1 million output tokens, these guys are $2 and I think 16. So way cheaper if you're using DeepSeek via their actual APIs, um, and also via openrouter. And then these ones, they are a bit expensive. So they are actually coding instances where you'll find that, you know, this is probably expensive. Maybe this is, I'll say 10 to about 16. So this is how it is right now. So this is actually the cheapest model, and you can actually go ahead and pair DeepSeek R1 with another general purpose model which they already have, which is DeepSeek V3, and it's really good at coding and all those other things. So get the reasoning models, use them for thinking through tasks beforehand, get the general use models, and actually just make them do what the LLM has thought of, and then go ahead and get better results and get more cost-effective results. This is actually, I believe, 1 point something dollars. I think I'll put it like to 1.8 to maybe $2 as well for the same amount of output tokens as the rest of these. So I hope this actually explains everything. I hope you have an idea about DeepSeek and how exactly you can use it now. Um, it does work just like these other models, but if you do have a task that requires extra thinking or that is quite complex in nature, these models shine the most there. All right, thank you so much. I hope to have another um, tutorial coming out explaining how exactly we can use these in agents. And so stay tuned for that.